So, welcome to week 2 of our soul revival of the goddess within. This one is spiritual detox and reset. And as I was upstairs getting ready, I was having that thought, that moment of why I created the goddess within and the whole journey through that empowerment of she is. And when she is started, no, she is more than existing. It was the movement of right before I turned 50 and the expectation of what I thought turning 50 was going to be. And what I held in my heart, I'm like, okay, so the journey was already had been, of this sense of awakening into me had already been beautiful, beautifully challenging, and met with fate and experiences and ups and downs, just like life. And then I was that whole thought, this belief that turning 50 was going to be a turning point. I felt something in my heart. I felt something was going to be the sense of owning kind of who I was and an acceptance. And what I wasn't expecting, what 50 was really about to become. And 50 was probably one of the biggest storms, most challenging experiences, and probably some of the darkest days. But through it all, what I realized was it started to create something, and it started to awaken me to something new inside of myself. And I started the soul revival of the goddess within as a course, a place where I wasn't in the expectation to be a teacher, wasn't the downloading of all of more than existing, but it was all of who I was in becoming on the other side of more than existing. All of who we are here to become when we start to realize we're here to be more than the stories that have defined us, or the stories of others that we have been a part of their fated experience of how we are defined. And one of the greatest things that I've really truly recognized within myself in putting all of the pieces and mapping my way through, tying on strings, just like, I don't know if you remember, or if you had this in the 70s, or if you're around in the 70s and 80s, but my parents used to run the Boys and Girls Club, so they worked with all the kids. And they always did all these events with them and all these crafts and stuff. So my dad was a painter, and mom could create all the leather purses, and dad made the jewelry. But my mom taught a class on string art. And she would print out the nails with all the little tiny nails, and she would put the design on a board, and then you'd use thread and you'd string the art, and you would create this picture, and it would look like 2 or 3D depending on the layers of the thread. And these were up in our house. And I'm like, that's the best way I can describe what it feels like when you start to travel back and not just try to, eliminate this emotion or get rid of this out of your life or clear this or declutter your house or declutter your mind. But when you start to string together all of the experiences that you've existed within and all of the moments of your life. And I have this weird thing that I remember all of these moments that should not have really bothered you or affected you, or not realizing they did, but moments that were essence of recognizing some of these things that happen within you and why you do the things you do and the shame you carry from them. And I had this memory while I was upstairs thinking of the more than existing, thinking of the goddess within, of remembering being at a house one time that my mother and I were visiting her friend, and it was a very wealthy friend who ended up being a bigger story than the story I knew at the time, but I could feel the tension while I was there. And she cooked, the little tiny medallion steaks, the little filet mignons, and it was only lunchtime, and we were going for lunch. And there's these little tiny meats on the table in the center and all these things. And you had to pick up your own food. And there was only 3 of us, and I'm sitting down listening to these women chat, and I could feel this sense of what, most would probably call I was anxious or had anxiety or social anxiety, whatever I have. And I'm like, no, the young 20-year-old of me had a lot more going on. My thought was, I was used to big steaks because Dad cooked us big steaks all the time. But how many of these do I take? They look little. And so in the midst of trying to overcome the anxiety I was feeling, I grabbed two off the plate. And I start eating. I start putting this food in, unconsciously eating and thinking that I have to kind of fill up the space or fill up my plate, fill up the energy. The unspoken stuff that was happening was something that was happening between these two women and something they were existing in that I did not know until a couple years later. But my memory and my body is how both women looked at me with such disgust for the amount of food I was eating on my plate. And I held that thought. And I was upstairs and the whole experience just came back to me. And I could see it all reenacting it. The greatest thing that I learned in my 50s, and the thing that most people followed me by or wanted to be more like me for, was the fact that they thought I had confidence. I have great confidence. I had great confidence in the essence of who I was, of the woman I created that nobody else created. And she was a shadow. She was the essence of everything I loved and hated. She was the everything that I loved and hated, from the fact of how other women compared me, made me made themselves a victim or victimized me because of, or things like that. And I just started to shrink and hide, or I started to become bigger. What I realized in my 50s, and she is, in creating this program right here, was it was a voice where I didn't have to be the ultimate of who I am in that channel or who I am in my gifts, but that I would be able to show up as Corrie. Because the thing that I thought I had that I didn't have was confidence. And nobody would have ever known that I wasn't confident. Because the thing about confidence is the ability to trust your own instincts, to trust your own intuition. I'm great at using it for everyone else. I sucked at using it for myself. So in the moments with the meat, I should have known what was happening was way greater than me. But of course, I turned it into something that was a problem with me. It was about me. I allowed myself to be the joke, to be the fool, because I would be the reflection to break the ice in the room. I allowed myself to become everything that I was not. And the focus turned towards the obvious, that I had a larger body than the other little tiny women in the room. So it was about me, being greedy about food or having to put in food. So I would be the buffer and a reflection away from everything else that was happening in the room. In my 50s, the mirror turned around. And the mirror became internal. And the threads and the pieces and the maps started to put those little nails in the coffin, nails in the picture of who I was, and started to put the threads around and started to create an image of something that I couldn't see. And this had me yesterday taking a chapter from a book, the last chapter that I wrote probably 15 pages for last week, and deleting them. And realizing what I had wrote was razor blades and love mixed together. And it's called the second glance. It's when you take the second glance and you look in. And it was in the loss of my aunt yesterday, and in my aunt's passing yesterday morning, that I started to, I don't have mascara on for a reason, that I started to really take that moment, that opportunity where I am right now at this pivotal turning point in my life. And I started to really, truly put the threads fully together. And I started to see this self that has been evolving this year, and what confidence really looks like, and what confidence really feels like. And to find my way into this confidence, that what is being asked of me to be who we become on the other side. And so all of these years, I've carried so many of those little memories that are so great that I would remember that girl who was always the problem, always this, and I would try to be greater than her. The only person I ever chased, and the only one I tried to ever be like, because I learned early in life not to be like anyone else, was the essence of a soul. And so when I rewrote the chapter, I realized I deflect away from the most beautiful thing there is for me to look at. And that deflection and that reflection, that internal reflection, that mirror that turns inwards, is what mirrors our truth. And that is that we are our soul. That we are that of that God consciousness. And every time that reflection comes back to me, I turn away. We try to run, we try to avoid, we try to go away from. So in week 2, I've written pages and pages and pages of where this is. Last week, we talked about the intention and the seed. This week, we talk about belief and faith. And the one thing that we don't realize we don't believe in is ourselves. If we believed in ourselves and if we seen the truth of who we really, really are, we wouldn't spend so much time chasing everything that we are not. We wouldn't punish ourselves and we wouldn't have to numb ourselves. And most of all, we wouldn't be looking into another or in competition or in comparison to define or create the essence of who and what we are. And what I realized in that moment and every other moment as I threaded it all together was 99% of the time, what I was feeling within me was never about me. It was because I have spent a lifetime existing in other people's energies. The greatest thing I've learned this year is I've stepped back and out of energies, or since I can't even be with people so much since the COVID stuff, was that I really stepped away from energies. And I've stepped into my own energy. And I stopped trying to get into energy. And I started to get into spirit. The inward reflection is getting out of the energies and get into spirit. Get out of the energies and get into spirit. When you get into spirit and you learn the power of listening to spirit, you learn the power of letting spirit define a moment, a situation. You realize you're not trying to judge the experience or the moment. You're not trying to judge another. You're not trying to read the experience that you're in. You're in it because you're there. And I realized that's one of my greatest gifts in who I am as a healer, who I am as a teacher, who I am as a mystic. So I'm finding as I thread those pieces together, some of the greatness of me through this most challenging time. Because without my confidence, without confidence in me, and you having confidence in you, without believing in you, you'll always believing in your shadow. You'll always have a confidence and ego and a why and a push and a strut that all ties to that of the shadow of you. And as long as you're doing that, you will always exist in some level of suffering, misery, doubt, fear, needing to constantly be detoxing, because it's energy. Because it's energy. Yesterday, I was dropped off my daughter. We found out as we were driving about my aunt. And then we get out of I get to Maggie's house and I realize I'm in her energy. I'm in her space. I'm trying to be a mother. I'm trying to be a grandmother. I'm trying to be strong. I'm trying to be strong. And it's not working because the confidence of that is like, it's becoming egotistical confidence in the fact that then you hear yourself talking about things like, we understand this, we get this. And I'm like, no, we understood it. We got it. We know it all. But I don't. So I said, Maggie, you know what? I'm just going to go home. And I got to the gas station. I pulled in and I just got just pulled into the parking lot and I felt myself cry. And I felt myself allow myself to be sad, myself. And that's confidence. Confidence in yourself to know that it's okay to not to be something. And with that, my phone rang and I started to laugh. And it was my childhood best friend, my partner in crime, growing up through all of our adult lives. And she said, let me guess, you're alone. And I said, yes. She said, I know you so well. I know that your best moments or your best work is done alone. Because you try to be something, or you try to take from everyone else, or you try to be that light in a room. And so you can't, that's the only way that you actually are you. And she said, very few people ever get to know you. And I'm like, that's such truth. So we talked all the way home about everything and nothing. She drove home with me on the phone. And then she knew that I was okay and she could just leave. And that's the essence of us coming into here today. When you start to believe into yourself, when you start to be able to live from spirit, you start to be very okay with knowing that the storms will be there. You have to exist in them, but you don't have to hide from you no more. You don't have to numb yourself from you. You don't have to be in disguise. You don't be wondering why them and not me. Because if you wonder that, you don't just wonder about the good things, you wonder about the bad things. And then you get an answer to that. If you try to live in somebody else's energy, if you try to be somebody else, you don't just get the good, you get the all. When you define yourself by being what somebody else is or somebody else's experience, what you ask for, you receive. So you don't realize that a lot of what you're carrying or a lot of what you've become in that sense of existing and creating yourself from a shadow-based self. And I didn't even know some of this because I thought I was fucking confident. Because I am strong. Because I'm strong in my virtues. But if I was confident, I would not have allowed some of the relationships. If I was confident, I would not self-sabotage myself. If I was confident, if she was everything she thought she was, she wouldn't have been on repeat. So some of the greatest beautiful things that I've learned this year and what I've got unfolding is there is such confidence in allowing yourself to fall into spirit and to say, I can't do this today. And that I need assistance or I need guidance or I need help. And I've learned the power of prayer and the power of meditation to be the greatest things that help to be able to help us in detoxing. How do we know that we need a spiritual detox? We are not sleeping. We are numbing. We're talking more than we are listening. We're taking on a million different things, trying to find a way. We feel like we need to keep filling up. We don't have enough, not enough on our plate. We got to find something else to do. We put our focus into everyone else instead of into self. Because then we have a self-prophecy of how everyone else is going to disappoint you, and how everyone else is going to take from you, and how everyone else is going to use you, and how everyone else is trying to be you, or how everyone, trust me, been down every one of these fucking roads. There's not any of this that I can honestly say that I probably haven't at one point or another, consciously or unconsciously, unaware, aware, whichever state of mind we're in, whichever state of grace we're in, whichever state of pain we're in, that we have not existed somewhat in. It's not about beating ourselves up. It's about now believing in ourselves and loving ourselves enough to find our way beyond this, to move beyond this energy, to see ourselves in that energy of like monads, right? We're a part of a creation of a mathematical construction to be able to find a solution. It needs a factor. It has a oneness. So it has oneness, it has an answer, it needs something in between. We're the in between. And we are what is needed in order to find solutions. And if we're not included in finding the solution, then we can never get to a solution, because all we ever see is the unsolved problem. And as long as we are the unsolved problem, we'll never be able to get to the solution, and we'll always be looking at just us as the problem instead of stringing the pieces. And that's not to say everyone else caused the problems, but what did I have faith in? What did I believe in? What did I let myself believe in enough that it could become that constant story? What did I not really have? So this is why I didn't have confidence. Because when you're kind of raising yourself, like being raised by wolves, because when you're ultimately raising yourself, when even your parents don't have the capacity or maturity, or they have a one thought view of raising you, and you're different than that, like, I'm born a mystic, I'm born into this alchemy journey that I've been on, then you find yourself coming to your own conclusions, raising yourself. Who taught you how to be confident? They don't teach that in school. They teach you how to solve math problems. They teach you history. They teach you those things. History is supposed to be taught so that we understand past and future now. Past, now, and future. Mathematicals is supposed to be about solutions. But who teaches you about the confidence? Who taught you what confidence was? Who taught you what believing in yourself was? What was your confidence story in your life? I know what mine was, right? Don't fucking let them see you looking like that. Suck them tears back up, or I'm going to fucking smack you in the head. Right. And to me, I can laugh at those things. I can find humor in some of these things, or listen, you're going to go straight to hell if you question that one more time. Right? The power of that on a mind of a child who has a limited capacity to understand or perceive or to use discernment. The ability to use discernment in being able to distinguish between what they really meant, what was real, what was not, what was going on. We didn't. Kids accepted things as they were. More than existing taught me confidence. Good. Me too. That's why I'm going to write More Than Existing 2.0. Because I know the other side of it. Or else I wouldn't be here right now teaching this as Corrie. Allowing myself to be real. And that's where the preacher exists, right? That's where the essence of that prophetess exists. Is the ability now that I have to be able to use discernment and being able to separate, and to be able to do this from a place of lightheartedness, but sense of healing in self, and understanding that we're all on an individual journey. Nobody's on the same journey. But this other parts of what we're here to release and let go of, the not sleeping, the searching, not consciously thinking, like just spewing out words or spewing out conversation and not giving it a sense of a consciousness. So from the subconscious, everything we watch, everything we view, it's like, blah, 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 this is what I believe, and these people are. And so I wrote a little blog this morning about, the essence of the identity of a trucker. And I used trucker, but I meant everybody's identity. We identify everyone by these things. Well, that's truckers. Well, I live with one of those truckers. And all grown up, I used to say, I'll never date a trucker, because we had friends who were truckers. And I lost one of my dear friends who was a trucker who died in his truck. And so this whole essence of this trucker identity. And this is one of the places where we really have to spiritually detox from our minds, is how we identify people by jobs, by the roles they play, by our previous experiences with them, by our previous experiences with a specific person. We know what we know based on ourselves being in relationship to, based on where they were, based on their emotional availability, based on their capacity to give, to love, to show. But it doesn't mean we know people. And so this also then bring it back to us. We identify ourselves based on what we have tried to create out of our sense of survival and having to survive, out of fight or flight, right? Out of fear, out of losses, out of gains, out of titles, out of education, out of all of those things, out of hurt, out of pain. And it's the biggest thing that we have to detox from ourselves. To become nothing, to lose everything, to be at those places in our lives, those lowest moments can be our most defining moments. But what rises from those moments? And that was what I stopped fighting in this year. I stopped fighting to rise above it. I put faith in something beyond me. I stepped into spirit and I allowed myself to rise, which is the lotus flower moment. Meaning that I would have to cleanse as I went. Look at where the threads are attached. Look at the roots. Look at the thoughts. Look at what kind of double life we live. How many of us live a double life? We live a life that the world sees. We live a life that the people around us see. We live a life in private. So we're living a double life. When we don't believe in us or we have a fear about who we are, my greatest gifts and what I give to the rest of the world, I obviously had a fear around. And so we're going to be working on past life things, because obviously I've been hung, crucified, tortured for being this person. And no matter what, this soul keeps coming back as the same fucking person. And so the karma of this life that I've come to know is that I have to walk the alchemy of this weird, wacky witch, of this weird, wacky, wild soul person who talks to everything that is out there, who sees the unbelievable, who talks to voices that are just unbelievable to even know that these voices exist and know that it's not mental illness. That no matter how much the world judges me, criticizes me, second guesses me, asks where I got my credentials, that I have to have faith enough and believe in this enough to walk the fucking line. And that's what you have to be, with confidence. It's not easy. I'm still working it. But the greatest things that they've started to detox from me this year was not by me forcing it, not by me saying, oh, I got to go on diet. Oh, I got to do this. I got to do that. It was during some of the deepest prayers and meditation when I would hear the voice say, you will never again do this. And everything stopped. Like my addiction to coffee, because the coffee was feeding the dopamine addiction that we have been brewing since we were children. For generations, this has been brewing. And not that there's anything wrong with coffee. But when you drink coffee and take diet pills and do all those things just to have the energy to get to the day, you are spiritually depleted. Because where was my energy? It was not in me. It was in everybody else. Because I love freaking hard. I love deep. And I wanted to create a legacy. I wanted to create something to leave behind. And I'm telling you these stories because these stories turn them into yours. Where does this resonate for you? Right? Not so that we pick ourselves apart, but you see in your own life how simple this is. But once I allowed myself to now be reset by spirit, by the spirit in me connecting to the spirit out there that's helped me, was the things that are not serving me. I don't know what serves me and what doesn't serve me. We tell ourselves because something serves somebody else. I don't know what serves me and doesn't serve me. So, but spirit does. It knows what is good and healthy for my body. So to be able to know that, two of the greatest things that are gone are wine and coffee. Because all I was doing was replacing one addiction with another. Because as long as we keep replacing, having to fill back up, we're living in energy. We're living in the existence of an energy, and that energy could simply be somebody else's thought or your own memory or your own emotions that are from previous experiences that have created a faith in something, like a faith in believing what somebody else said you were, or a faith in believing that that's what we are, or a faith, in something that you believe in, but it's not what you believe in yourself. And so through this experience, it's a coming into awareness of we spend so much of our lives in a sleep state, and that we're not here. The whole world is never going to fully awaken. You're not here to awaken with a world that's going to awaken. That's bullshit. Not everybody's soul is on that same journey. But yours would not be in the presence of this class if you haven't already made a choice to choose to awaken to something new that you didn't know before. So you're in a state somehow, an awareness somehow of knowing, gaining, growing, evolving. You're in the journey, right? And so there's this sense of faith that you have somewhere that keeps guiding you back into you. But this is where that last glance chapter I rewrote. But the problem is we don't stay in it. We know it, we get it, and then we run from it. And that's where we get caught back up in the world's energies. That's where we get caught up in what we think we should be doing, because we're so programmed to the jobs, to life, to having to prove ourselves, having to create ourselves, having to be something. The creation of you will never be about satisfying the world, because you will never satisfy the world. You will never be liked fully in the world. You'll never be loved by all in the world. And if that's a desire to be that acceptance, you'll never be able to accept you. And so these things that we start to detox and start to let go of, what else can I say? Foods. So our choices in foods, what we feed ourselves. And the conscious awareness of food and the life of food. That's another big one. What we numb our bodies with, what we numb ourselves with. The suppressions. Those type of things that have a negative impact. And so when we speak of reset, and this is why when I said last week, it's what starts to unfold. Reset doesn't mean that you should go sign yourself up for an exercise class that you're going to fail in because you ultimately don't fucking like it. And your body don't like to do it. Or your body already hurts enough. Why would you torture it? The reason why we do those things to ourselves is because our biggest addiction is suffering. We are programmed and conditioned as human race to suffer. And to have that self-prophecy. I'm going to do that. I'm going to accomplish this. So I stopped trying to do all the things that I thought I should do. And some weren't by choice. Some was because the body put a total halt to my life in this journey of coming in and said, you're going to sit right here until you are willing to stay looking in the light, until you can look into that same light, the same way that you show up for the world. You're going to show up like this for you. I'm not going to tell you I'm all the way there, because I'd be fucking lying. I'm not there. I'm in the becoming of it. And yes, I kept the backup of the last chapter that I wrote just in case I failed. Just in case that was like, oh God, I'm trusting something larger than life here. Like this is a week of writing that is now gone. But I seen something as I wrote that last chapter, because it's the book called The Truth Beyond the Existence. Beyond the existence of everything you have ever existed within is the most perfect, perfect, beautiful soul who lives in divine energy, who is created from the divine, who is a part of the divine. So if we can see ourselves back to that and to hold that thought, we can start to replace the thoughts. Because it's the replacement of thoughts that start to change the game. Like that cat, she got just as much confidence with no fur as she got with fur. Because to her, she is no different of a cat with or without that fur. Because in the home she lives in, she's allowed to be the queen. She's loved. This is her space. She lives by spirit. And she knows it. If I can't be the same confidence, skinny, fat, whatever, then I don't have confidence. I have an image that I live in that creates a confidence. And that was a big struggle for me, because I tried to return to everything that I once was in a need of, thinking, if I build myself back big, if I build myself in big thoughts, in big energy, build a big empire, build anything, at least then that will be, I can be creditable. But that's not a truth. So what we start to do is the ability to start being able to look at what's controlling your thinking. What's controlling your thinking? What patterns are alive? Where is your thinking coming from? Is your thinking coming from all that the subconscious has been fed? Or are you allowing yourself to go silent and allow your thinking to go into, I'm curious. What's beyond my thought? What's triggering this emotion today? What's really there? What's really happening? Because you have to think greater than your knowing. You have to think greater than your knowing. What we think we know is a fraction. And it's such a, I know. If I knew, I wouldn't be repeat, right? And even when I think I know, there's always something greater, smarter, better than. The greatness and the power of being able to live in the consciousness is the greatest gift. And it's the one thing that I have run the most from. Because I want it to be like, I wanted to be accepted. I wanted to be a human. I didn't want to be that reflection for people anymore. It gets exhausting and tiring to be the comparison story. And it gets exhausting and tiring to constantly be trying to keep up to expectations. And it gets exhausting and tiring in trying to force yourself to succeed. Because the the sets of failures that come from it, we truly believe those failures then to be anchors to there being something wrong with us, because we're not diving deep enough in to put the threads to the mapping of why I am constantly in this state of being. What is my continual, and why is that so predominant for me? That's one of the deepest things that I have learned. And so having to become somebody else has been one of the greatest things, and then picking up the pieces. And that's where my Paint Me Beautiful series started. I didn't know that's what it was about at the time. It was actually creative journaling, where I had to have faith and believe in a color on a canvas was going to become something. And as you start to paint it, start to realize how I thought it should be, and how I had this image in my head of, oh, I'm going to create this picture, and this is what it's going to look like, and she's going to look this way, she's going to look that way, the painting's going to go this direction. And every fucking one I do either turns itself around, the face ends up another direction, the hair ends up a different color, the mouth ends up a different shape, and she looks nothing like what I thought she would. And that's how I start to realize that spirit. I'm not in anybody's energy, because that girl on that painting does not exist. She is a non-existent energy. So she got no energy. She is nothing, but she is everything, and teaching me some of the most powerful lessons I've ever needed to know. And so she became the essence of what I recognized. God, you're talking to me. I have been apologetic because I'm not the right kind to be the voice of God. My first painting is called The Joke, because she's allowed herself to be that humorous self, because I have confidence that that girl could stand her fucking ground and she could hold her own. But the girl that would come home and take the makeup off, take the hair off, take the eyelashes off, take it all off, would sit down and cry and ask, why is she just not enough? Why is it she lives in a province where, she goes out and she's the joke because of her Newfoundland accent? Why is she the joke? Because she's the white Indian. Why is she this? Why is she that? And why does she need to wear this armor? And why does she sell herself? Why does she sell her soul? Why does she walk out and give her advice to everybody who don't care, who gives nothing back in return? And I don't mean in my work. I mean in your everyday life. Where in your everyday life do you realize you're not seeping away from you, that you're seeping away from you? And I mean just by walking out in public. Those places, you don't realize that how much energy you walk into in a run of a day. In my work, it's a pride, because I love the opportunity to use the gifts to be able to help people who are truly coming and showing up, because they know, but it's the rest of your world, right? But then I had to find, if I could find such pride and such love in seeing others succeed, you have to find that in yourself. And so there's a lot of alchemy that has come this past year, and that's what I realized. This is a stage of alchemy, where in the book, The Alchemist, at the end, he swirls and he disappears and he becomes this sparkle, and he dies. He becomes everything and nothing. I didn't get it the first 3 times I read it. 4th time I read the book, I got it. That's the essence of you honor everything that you were. But if everything that you were is not reflecting the level of success and life and happiness and joy that feels this sensation within, and that you fully believe in the essence that you're existing within, then you're in the sparkle and the shine and this something else of somebody that you're not. Because sometimes your greatest comparison is the version of you used to be. Not just somebody else. The greatest version of you that once was, and you compare yourself to that, you will always be in the failure. Because you're trying to relive something that you've told yourself in your mind. But once you can step back and see it again, you're going to find out you're not really that. That everything that you told yourself really never really ever existed. Because it's imagination. We create all of those stories. Right? So sometimes you have to truly step into that place. You have to believe without doubt. Live like it's alive. Live like it's alive. And so I've been doing that, living like it's alive, living like I'm alive. And that's not faking it. It's because I know those things to be truth, as do you. So the parts of you where you are exceeding without doubt, and you're trying to still run from it and say, well, that's not what I want to do. That's not what I want to be. Well, they are some of your greatest qualities. You don't want to be it because it's not what you think is going to give you the sparkle life of whatever that is, what you think you're achieving. And this book is a prime example. The Healer, Mary Webb. This little tiny cartoon character-ish book is of a woman that no one in the world other than people who knew her know of her, and now the children who study her. And this little tiny book speaks of a little Mi'kmaq woman who was a healer, who was living her divine purpose, never getting rich, financially rich, never becoming worldly famous, but was famous to God. Because she became the solution to a problem. Babies need to be delivered. She had wisdom and gifts without a degree. She was not a doctor. She had no training. She's my great aunt. She is a true alchemist. And there's a little tiny book that a few little writers found out about her and included. And so this book it's not available to the public. It's used in schools to tell the story of a woman. Yours may be your children who tell the story of a woman who was larger than life for them. Yours may be the neighbor that you helped. Yours may be that one person who you made a difference in their lives for. That's what makes us our greatest, when we learn to live from spirit and not from living in the energy. Because in that energy is a lot of chatter. We are all made of energy. Energy has a purpose. It is called a force. It is a push. It is to make us be able to move. But the essence of who we are is in the spirit of us. Is in the spirit of allowing ourselves to come. That doesn't mean that we stop trying to succeed in this world, but we stop living and allowing ourselves to become contaminated, depleted, shorted of, not know ourselves, not be us, because we constantly keep allowing a positive become a negative, allowing ourselves to allow thought to form a story. She just was. And she just lived. As did my great-grandmother, her sister. As did my great-grandfather, who was a trapper. As did all the other ancestors. As did my grandparents on the white side. As did. They all became a legacy. They all became a legacy. Just like your parents and your grandparents, your people have become a legacy as well to somebody. So it's not about that we're not going to be a legacy to somebody. It's that we stop trying to create it. But what kind of legacy do we become? Some are not that good, right? And so if we become our truest version of self and we believe in ourselves and we start to trust the guidance, just like those paintings, just like those pictures, something unfolds. I even threw them in the garbage. I even walk up someday and say, what the fuck am I doing? But what I recognized from them was I never fully completed them. Each one has something left incomplete. The edges are not painted. They're not sprayed with gloss yet. Or there's something in the painting that I didn't get to finish yet. There's something left incomplete. And I know why. Until I believe in me, I'm not allowed to put my final stamp on them. Because I wasn't even signing the pictures. In the last chapter, I wrote about the pointless paintings. And the me that I hated sitting on the couch. Who the fuck is this woman sitting on the couch? I fucking hate her. Why is she sitting here? It's like a static. She comes in and out. It's like I see me and then I don't see me. I see me, I don't see me. Right? So that's what we do in our lives. So the incomplete areas of your life, those areas of our lives, or those places within us that we're trying to complete by force, surrender them. Surrender into them. I don't know. And that's how we start to reset. And some of our solutions are going to have to be exploring our past. How deeply ingrained is the past? How deep is that story that plays out? Most stubborn woman ever met in my life was probably my aunt who just passed. Right? And so that stubbornness, so yesterday they were all talking about her stubbornness. I called it determination. Because I've surrendered into my stubbornness. And I've called it many other things in the detox. Because the stubbornness has also had me holding on to a lot of anger, a lot of fear, a lot of hurt. A lot of those things that have an emotional attachment. And to be able to turn that around and turn around faith. So faith in yourself requires, that sense of what is that elixir? What is that sweetness on the outside? What is that? What brings that about for you? Am I living a double life? What is my state of consciousness? Why do we become the need to be a sheep and to blend in? Why do we do these things that we do? It's because sometimes people, and people will need this, not everybody, and that's not saying it's a bad thing for people. Some people need to have a leader, need to be guided. That is physical, in the physical world. When you start working with spirit, you realize that we have a guide. You have a mapping system. But what it takes is raising from subconscious to conscious. Instead of seeking and searching from the subconscious, is the awareness of the subconscious, of the emotions, but envisioning on the other side of that. Envisioning means going into conscious awareness. And that don't mean envisioning yourself in a specific body or a specific image or a specific job or a specific role. That doesn't not help, or that helps, but it's about the power of what auto-suggestion does. If you start suggesting to yourself that I am greater than my fears, I am greater than my ism, I am greater than my need for validation. I am greater than my need for. I am greater than, I'm greater than, I'm greater than. Well, you start to believe you're greater than, but you start to look for what goes into greater than. I am more than the stories that I hear others say. And what you're doing is that's where taking responsibility comes in. You're starting to take that responsibility. And in thinking, I mean, I had no idea Bob was going to pass, but for some reason, a few weeks ago, I pulled out, these books and start getting, but over the summer, I start taking training again with Bob Proctor. And I couldn't understand why. Why am I back here? I get it. But in it, he speaks of this. And I want to read this because this is how easy it is to be convinced, and how easy it is for us to have faith in other things, how easy it is for us to fall into being influenced. So faith is a state of mind which you may develop at will after you have mastered the 13 principles, which we're not going to go into today, but because it is a state of mind which develops voluntarily through application and use of principles. 1, repetition of affirmation. Repetition of affirmation of orders to your subconscious mind is the only known method of voluntary development of the emotion of faith. So it's always a voluntary state. Perhaps the meaning may be made clearer through the following explanation as to the way man sometimes becomes criminals. The men sometimes become criminals, or women. Stated in the words of a famous criminologist, when men first come in contact with crime, they abhor it. If they remain in the contact with crime for a time, they become accustomed to it. So you get used to it. You become accustomed to whatever that is. And they endure it. If they remain in contact with it long enough, they finally embrace it and become influenced by it. This is equivalent of saying that any impulse of thought which is repeatedly passed on to the subconscious mind is finally accepted and acted upon by the subconscious mind, which proceeds to translate that impulse into a physical equivalent by the most practical procedure available. In connection with this, consider again that statement. All thoughts have been emotionalized, given feeling, and mixed with faith, begin immediately to translate themselves into their physical equivalent or counterpart. So everything that we are told to believe in, everything that we exist in, everything that we stay in long enough, that we start to accept it, we start to endure it, we start to become it, we start to be influenced by it, and we start to believe it. So if everything that has taken us farthest away from ourselves have the power to do that, what if we turn it into everything that brings us into a positive state of being? The greatest reset is to turn the emotional tide. When you can turn the tides of the emotions, you start to override and reset the emotional game. Because if, for example, you find yourself getting in a situation where you fear something, well, fear turns to anger, then anger becomes frustration, frustration becomes resentment, resentment becomes this, and then it becomes that, and then it becomes, and so then it plays out, and then before you know it, you've created an enemy, you've made someone an enemy, you're angry at somebody, you're angry at yourself, there's people out there that you hate, you're identifying people, you're labeling people, including yourself, you've become a part of the problem instead of part of the solution. because it takes one emotion and somebody triggering one emotion to then play out the game. It's the Shakespearean stories, right? And if you're a great drama teacher, you know how to teach, you know how to project that into the world, right? And so if drama is your queen, right? If you have the archetype to be that drama, to be that dramatic, to be that energy, then that's probably very easy. To be able to forward this forward. So faith. So if we start telling ourselves from a state of mind that I have faith enough to believe in me. But who is me? So refer to myself in one of my books, my statement says, somebody said to me, who do you think you are, God? And I stopped and I thought about it because first I wanted to defend that. And I'm like, maybe I am. Well, maybe we all are. But what's wrong with believing in ourselves if you don't see God as an ego and you see God as all love and all light? And if you can see yourself as all love and all light, and you start to want to achieve more of that within you, to embody that, to illuminate that, to live as that, then you start to be able to look at areas and people in this world who actually existed as that. And then you know that it's possible to find that in your way within you. So the me that we aspire to be is that God, goddess energy. And the one thing that we have been told all of our lives to not to be is to be that, because that's shameful. You should be ashamed to say that. Because what happens if the world does wake up? What if we all realize that we all are that powerful? Within ourselves to be love, not to be hate, not to use it in a negative way, not to feel the need to try to, overpower, but to live in power within you. It's not being, right? It's allowing. Yeah, exactly. And when you start to be this, to live from spirit instead of the energetic pulls, instead of having to pull those strings in to mold them, is living of spirit. Spirit is the essence of all things, of how Mother Nature grows. Spirit is the essence of how the wind blows. Spirit is the essence of how the universe cares for itself. Spirit is the essence that steps into us. When something that we just can't even imagine, we just capable of doing, we just do. We just be. Spirit is the essence that replaces the essence of worry, the things that stress us the most. But it also gives us courage to do some of the things that are the toughest choices and decisions that we have to make. And confidence in knowing that we're doing them for the right reasons, if they're not in the way of being of hurt and harm to cause hurt and harm. If it's a vindictive or the need that you want to prove that you're better, then there's a question of where that is coming from. And so that sense of auto-suggestion that comes in is to really look at emotions, like thoughts need emotions. Thoughts need emotions. Emotions come from memories. Emotions come from the subconscious. They're created. So if thought comes from inspiration, has no emotional attachment, imagine how powerful it'll be. Imagine how powerful we can all be. if we don't tie it to the identity, the image, that we're not in comparison to who we think people are and what they think people's motives are and what we think people are out to do. And all of that stuff is a fear story, and society has created it. And society has created for specific reasons. And then we became the identity of society. So how about we become identity of the spirit world? How about we become the identity of consciousness? How freeing could that be? The biggest thing what I learned in having to leave my double life and that sense of suffering. And I wrote this down. We can't stand suffering, but we then end up suffering more when we do more than we are actually trying to awaken, because we are always trying to make home in the land of suffering. This is not the home. This is not the place where we are supposed to make peace and make home. The world can be at war, but it doesn't mean we have to be at war. So when we stop studying humanity and stop studying human behavior and trying to fix other humans, we start to become aware of the power that is within us to look deeper into studying how we became so lost. And doesn't mean we're lost in every area, but how we can convince ourselves and have such conviction to the unhealthy, to the bad habits, to the things that keep depleting us, or to the directions that we think we should go, that keep us being lost in ourselves. The shadow is powerful and it has its purpose. Not that we don't use it. We're not trying to discount it. But we're trying to come into a realization of being able to feel that sense of self, to feel the beauty that is within us. And so not living a double life really truly meant that I had to go back through the equations and not just focus on myself. That's right here, right now. But I had to look at all of the aspects of self. So if we have a oneness up here, we have a greatness up here, we have this big dome energy, this, oneness, this consciousness that exists up here. Well, that has all these extensions that come off it, right? That have all these extensions. And then down from that, then comes down and it plops us into our own little energy of like like sub-god energies of that sense of that. And then from there drops down our human, right? So our higher self exists in that sub-godness. That's where our higher selves are. Then there's the goddess, then there's the ultimate oneness. So then there's our higher self, and then there's us. So in all of those equations, your soul would have existed in previous experiences. This human has only had this one. That's it. And when this human dies, you're gone. That was kind of what I even said to my dad yesterday. I'm like, that's how fast life is. We assume that we have this forever because the soul knows it's going forever. But you got this lifetime as this one human. And why we came and why we're here is to be able to bring the one things that humans don't have: the capacity and the ability to have unconditional love. Because as long as we don't have it for us, we will not have it for anyone else. We make excuses for our behaviors, or we justify, or we live in our own belief systems that are unbendable, unflexible, then we're going to expect the same thing from other people. Unconditional means that we're all going to be human, but what we have faith in, where we allow ourselves to change every day, all of those things start to change for us, right? And so having the courage to kind of go deep enough gives you the opportunity to allow yourself to reset, to start the journey of living more unconditioned within yourself. That means to know that some of the things that you need to reset from, you don't have the ability to do. I don't have the ability to do. I have a consciousness that has the ability to then to teach me, to guide me, to do it for me. And to allow me to then whatever it needs of me to do with it. But some things are beyond us. And so where your soul has existed before may have some of your biggest challenges, may have some of its biggest wisdom, may have some of the stories that we need to have. And so being able to be free is to free ourselves of all of this, but to also free our past. To free our past, so that our soul is also now able, because our soul is relying on us to release some of the karma. Our soul is relying on us to see this, to live this, to be this, to release the karma, to be the change, to be the reason why we stop putting people on crosses, why we stop burning people at stakes, why we stop, right? It's like the soul is saying, you know what, you humans are still very inhumane. As a human race, we're cruel. We are. What we're capable of doing to animals, to suffering, to torture, to each other. How you can be friends with your neighbor one day and then you could hate them so much that you're willing to just let them suffer and die. And if you can't be happy for your neighbor or for your friend's success, and there's something inside of you that's envious and jealous, then that's something within ourselves, right? And so knowing that, recognizing that, doing that. And so if a neighbor buys a new house and you're like, well, that's not fair. Yeah, I know what they get. I know how they got that. They got that because they do this and they do that. And we've seen it so much when Slave Lake was being rebuilt, right? And so like all of these, that's stories you create in your head because you have an emotional attachment or a belief system. Now, I bring that large scale because it makes us kind of have that little bit of a shock. Like I would never do that, but we do it. You know who we do it to the most? Ourselves. Ourselves. So the same thing that happens out there in the world on a big scale, you do it to yourself. To us. And so spirit, when you're working with spirit and you're working with guidance, and so all of the sessions that I do, I don't read energy. I read energy. I don't step into somebody's energy. And that's how I can call out bullshit, is because I talk to spirit. I don't talk to somebody's energy. I don't talk to their energy because energy lies. Energy has a lot of previous experiences that are in there that are not relatable to what is needed the most. Whereas if you speak to spirit, spirit is incapable of lying. I might not like what I get, and people might not like the session, but spirit gives us what we need. And so spirit has kicked my freaking ass through the 50s. And it was no focus in the world, no focus what anyone else was doing, no focus. It meant, yeah, you're receiving that way. You're taking that way. You're doing that. Now what's that for you? And so it was constantly like, yeah, you're going to see. You try to make that go that way. And it's funny because it becomes that energy, that game that starts to unfold, that then you're like, okay, well, I guess I better start listening. And once you start listening, it's amazing. So I want you to take a moment. I want you all to close your eyes. So we're going to go into a solution. We're going to take you into a place. I have like 5 more pages of this that I've never gotten to, but that's okay. We got 2 more weeks. I want you to just imagine that, just for a moment, you're going to give your human that's right here, right now, a real freaking break. Just give her a break. She's not responsible for half of the shit she's done in this lifetime. That this little soul that's inside of you has been also part of the game. The soul is not innocent. It's constantly giving you memories, or because you don't have full amnesia, that you start to awaken to where the soul has been, that you've read something on Google, or you watched a movie, or you've seen something that started to give you a memory. And maybe not even consciously aware of this, but unconsciously, you started to have an emotional response. And this is how we just kind of laugh at our little human body. And with a little chuckle and a little breath in and out, we're just going to let go. Just let go of your human, man. You're not that powerful to be that in charge of everything that's going on inside of you. Not even everything that's in your subconscious mind. It just is. Just free yourself right now. Just let your body relax. We're free. Now I want you to imagine as if up above you see the dome of energy of your higher self, where the soul exists. And as if you climb up a ladder and up and out of your human body, is like the soul is like, I'm going back up there. I'm going to get up there. And when it gets up there, notice that it starts to swing like a pendulum. The little ladder just starts to swing, and our soul self just connects into the fibers, into the threads of its own existence, of all of its lifetime, like the Akashic records. And as if you then start to see like a pendulum above your head swinging back and forth, just like a clock. And it's going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. We ask that it just finds that one life that existed within of the past, one previous lifetime where the soul would have existed, where there's something of great value that you can bring forward from that consciousness that just starts to alert you and aware, makes you more aware of some of the whys of why we do what we do, why we defend, why we feel like we have to be in protection, or where we leak out that sense of confidence. And then slowly see the pendulum slowing down, slowing down, slowing down. And this is a part of soul retrieval where we're going to step in and we're going to pick up that part of the soul where we end an old karma, untie an old thread, an old string. And we take out the nugget, the learned experience that will serve our highest good. And then we stop. And as we stop, it's as if the pendulum drops down and drops down into a different time. It can be this lifetime, another lifetime. Become aware as your soul's little feet hit the ground, almost like a little plop. Bring awareness, notice your feet. If you have feet, notice the light, notice the energy, notice your body. Notice your hands, notice the feeling, the sensations in the body, any awareness that you're coming into, just be aware of of your presence. And be awareness of your thoughts. And as you start to look around, start to notice where you are, what you're noticing, be observant, be the observer. You're just observing this past experience, this past time, a journey where the soul would have been. And then notice any feelings that start to arise. And then if any emotions start to come in, or any fear, anything like that, that starts to enter, know that that's coming from the subconscious of both you and where the soul would have been before, being fed in. It's just creating the experience. It's just creating the memory. It's not real. It just is what it is. It's an experience you would have existed in. And then as you turn and look around, you ask, what am I here to learn? What am I here to release? What am I ready to let go of? And we ask for this beautiful angel, this beautiful guidance, this beautiful goddess of mercy to come in and just to guide us through being able to let go. We ask for Archangel Michael in female form, Michelle, I like to call her, in female form, in softness and gentleness to come in and help cut any cords, to release any of this energy that you're feeling right now that is not serving the highest good. Any old karma that the soul during this existence is now ready to release. And to take it, wrap it in a beautiful purplish, like royal purplish, bluish kind of cloak, and take it back into spirit world and transmute it back into love. And in divine time, through soul journey, through your connection of reflecting inward, of coming into self, that it comes back as love, as wisdom, as a powerful tool to help you be able to create this beautiful self that is unfolding in your reset. And right here, right now, we ask for any resetting and recalibration that needs to happen, that realigns the soul and the human body back into alignment, whether it's through the heart, through the whole body, wherever it may be, through the nervous system. And we ask for that recalibration to happen down through the body, down through the human body. And as the soul releases its karma, as it sets itself free, as it reverses any old energy, any curses, spells, or anything that would have been placed upon it, any old beliefs that would have been there in that very time, whatever your experience is, we release, we surrender, we give it over. So be it, now be done. That the ties to that part of the spiritual journey for the essence of that soul where it had been is now released. Healed, cleared, resolved. And as the soul becomes like the pendulum again, we lift up and out of the experience with love, free, liberated. And as it's being lifted back up, it's being empowered, enlightened, back into its natural state with the God consciousness, connecting back in, and Kuan Yin is giving the beautiful blessing of awareness and wisdom. And as Kuan Yin is that of many hands, that Kuan Yin can be what you need her to be in times when we need her to be here. And right here, right now, she's being everything that is needed to send forth into the you that exists in the present moment now, anything that is needed to help you in your process and your journey with love, with unconditional love, with grace. And as the soul now is that pendulum energy again, as the essence now becomes just light form, just feel the essence of just a beautiful sway. Not forced, it's just swaying. This is the essence of spirit, free. And this free spirit right here, just floating, not wild, tamed, methodical, gentle, compassionate, caring, is aware of its return back into the human, and not forcefully, but just gently falling back in. It's like a butterfly, slowly landing, just gently coming back in. This is the divine feminine energy. Feeling the soul coming back into the human body. This is the feeling of enlightenment, of feeling the light, feeling ourselves being filled with light and love, and any healing that is needed. As we're connected to spirit world, we ask for this healing to start to be its slow release through you, through the subconscious mind, and through the power of the affirmation of positive energy and replacing any of those negative emotions and turning around. That we ask for any beautiful positive thought right now, any beautiful message of love to start to just taking up some space within you. And that this light starts to take up space where before shadow was taking up more space. As you breathe this in, we lock it all the way down to the toes, to the feet. Feel it through your spine, feeling the connection. Feeling your breath as this is connection to life force energy. Feeling yourself come all the way back into self. Connecting to the breath, to the heart, to the third eye, to the solar plexus, to the sacral, to the root, to the crown, front and back. And we ask in divine time, the wisdom, what we have learned, what we have gained, slowly comes back in as what is needed, what will serve your highest good. We start to envision this beautiful energy, this beautiful light as being more and more of your each and every day. More and more a part of you. Replenishing, resetting, restoring. Cleared, healed, resolved. We allow the natural flow. We allow love to guide us. As we find faith in the beautiful places and the beautiful things, including the faith in the beautiful you. Take a deep breath in and breathe out. And allow yourself to come back to the here and now. We are not greater than the universal laws. The universal laws work on our behalf when we allow ourselves to be in the flow. To know that energy works on our behalf to guide us, to lead us, to remind us, to stop us, to slow us. Spirit guides us through a whisper, through a vision, even with our human eyes. Repetition of continual affirmations will slowly have you starting to believe in something you may not have believed before. And also allows you to stop running and hiding or dashing or stepping away to let somebody else step in. The light is not a spotlight of competition. It's not a light of Jezebel. It's not a beautiful light that's there to trick you or fool you. It's a light that says your divine purpose is in love. And our divine purpose to become love and to allow ourselves to be loved. And that we shouldn't have to hide. And that most of the things that we want to heal from or need to heal through can be done with such grace when we just surrender in. When the mind is not the owner, and the mind is not the enemy, and the mind is not the controller. It's amazing how things start to unfold. As I'm preparing to turn into a new stage of the game, I have no expectations on 51. I have no expectations on getting to 51. But I have one strong knowing. And that's that I am worth the journey. And even the hard things that I have to do, I am worth doing the hard things for. And not just for me, because a part of who I am makes me who I am because of the gracious heart, because I love to give. And that's never been about satisfying something in myself. That's a knowing the power of seeing somebody else smile and somebody else shine is the opportunity for the world to become a greater place. And that's all I've ever wished for. Inspire each other to be better humans. It makes a difference. But first, we got to see that in ourselves. And we got to be not afraid to just be ourselves wherever we are. First, you got to find her. Because trust me, most times she's nothing like what you thought she was. And it's a beautiful journey finding that out. It's like having a new best friend you didn't know you had. I couldn't rearrange all the stuff today. And with me today I had to go downstairs and not find her. I had to go down and get her off the shelf. Saraswati. And I was surprised when Kuan Yin come in because I'm like, I have Saraswati, but I'm like, I'm looking for Saraswati because she told me to bring her. And Kuan Yin comes in. And Saraswati sits with an owl. Wisdom is greater than us. So if we allow ourselves to think greater, what you're doing is you're tapping into wisdom. Human knowledge has opinions. It has experiences. So there's always room for it to be wrong, to change, for it to not to be exactly is, because it's one person's view or a collective, a group of similar minds that created. But the wisdom that comes from there cannot be proved, cannot be proven. And it's not the words that speak it. It's the energy that's behind it. So if you sit in a conversation waiting to correct somebody, waiting to prove somebody wrong, waiting to jump in of, no, I think you got that wrong. When it's coming in from wisdom, then that's something that's on somebody else. So the greatest fear was always if I would say something wrong back when, but nothing comes out wrong, because if it gets a reaction and a trigger out of somebody, then it did its purpose. It got to where it needed to go into somebody. And that's where the real joke plays. I'm not a joke. It's how God keeps us seeking and searching for godliness. How no matter how much an atheist, no matter how much anybody is, the way of wanting to prove people wrong will always still lead everybody back to the one place of having to be astonished with the fact that I found something I didn't believe. And so wisdom is great, and wisdom can guide you. Compassion, truth of holding space. Exactly. And so wisdom can guide you in some of the most beautiful places of awareness within you. So don't be afraid to just tell yourself whatever you need to tell yourself. Write it out. You'll be surprised what you'll learn from it. Just sit with your pen and just write. It might not even fucking make sense to you, but do it. I opened up a book to give Sadie yesterday, and there's something in there that I thought was just garbage. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm like, Sage, don't mark on that. She's like, why? I said, that's my class I'm getting ready to teach, my new class coming up. I'm telling the 2-year-old like she knows, right? Because she's like, why? Because oh my God, that's Nana's class. It's in this freaking book that I wrote in like 3 years ago. Didn't make sense to the woman who didn't know it. So just, ask to be guided where you don't know. I don't know, but you do. God consciousness, higher self, whatever you want to call it. I don't know, but you do. So guide me through. Give me what I need. Help me through this. Provide the strength, the courage, whatever it may be. Block. So this is one of the big things. Block my habit from being able to return. Block it with love, not with resentment, not with guilt, not with shaming me. Shaming me my whole life didn't work. Made a bigger rebel. Block it with love. Every time I get close to wanting to cross that line, reflect your light onto me to why I'm not doing it. It's not because I'm here to deny myself. is because I'm here to become myself. Oh, I never heard that before. Frick, write that one down for me. That's just why we came. Not to deny ourselves. My face just went on fire with that one. That's the truth. That just hit somewhere. Because we're so used to having to deny ourselves or take from ourselves. But the reason why some of the things are being removed from our lives is so that we can become that essence of our truth. So we can live in that light. So when we start to turn how we view it around, because how we're conditioned to believe it, will always, lead us back down that path, down the fucking rabbit hole. Don't go down the rabbit hole. So block it with love. Ask for it to be blocked with love, for it to be healed with love, for it to be given love. And every time I get close, it will be that shining of light coming up, not a prickly bush of words of, that's why you can't have it, because this is what you are and this is what you do and da 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 da. Because you've heard those things everywhere else. Don't repeat how other people spoke to you. Repeat how you've been waiting your whole life to be spoken to. Admiration, kindness, love. Well, thank you, everyone. I look forward to what next week brings. I never know. We never know where this is going. I do know in the way that I do a lot of writing for this. So this is like, I have about 20 pages written. I spoke about, like, this is how it goes. So this is how just sitting with your pen starts to come. And that's one book. Another whole book over here that is same thing. And this one I wrote, it opened right on this page. I believe in me. And I started to write all the things. I am emotionally and spiritually well, without limits and expectations. I am free of the thoughts of others or previous versions of myself. I am a holy being. I'm a holy being. I can't even pick out the writing. I am whole. I am enough. I am my best friend. I am my business. And I don't know what that means. I am my business. And so when I wrote that, my ego wanted to get involved in that. Well, that's work. That's not who we are. I am my business. And what I got of that as I went on with that, I am allowed to be curious of me. You're allowed to be curious of you. So don't worry about what it means when it first comes out. Your ego's trying to get involved with it. But once you allow yourself to explore it deeper, I'm allowed to be nosy about me. I'm allowed to be curious about me. There's nothing wrong with that. I am my protector. I am love. I am beauty. I am brilliant. I am the universe. And then it's I am, and then I am no longer afraid to be I. And that's just letting it flow. But don't be afraid to let yourself write through, create through, paint through, draw through, sketch through, whatever it may be. Don't worry about it being pretty. It's not about being pretty. It's about being in the experience. So I hope that helps in some way. And thank you so very much. And I will see you next Sunday for our time together. Mwah. Bye-bye.